Using primary sources in the history classroom. Unit 4, Corroborating Sources. Generally, no single primary source is complete or perfectly reliable as evidence of a past event. In many cases, one source conflicts with others. To work effectively, students need to corroborate a source by comparing it with others on the same event or topic. In the early 1800s, the railroad began to transform life in Great Britain. The Liverpool to Manchester Railway was one of the first regularly operating railway lines. It was built to carry goods and passengers from the factories of Manchester to the port of Liverpool. These drawings are primary sources, showing what the trains looked like then. People reacted to the new railway in different ways. Some were thrilled about it, others hated it. This suggests a problem for historians. Which accounts of the railway and its impact should be trusted most? Here, for example, are two views about the impact of the railroad in the mid-1800s in England. These are from sources for the warm-up activity for this unit. Take some time to read them through. We'll work with them throughout the rest of this presentation. How are students to make sense of sources like these that conflict in tone and point of view? The sources clearly disagree strongly about the impact of the railroad. One sees it as harmful and wasteful. The other sees it as beneficial to the whole nation. The need to reconcile one source with another is called source corroboration. Here are the 5 basic skills stressed in this entire course. The focus for this lesson, source corroboration, is the underlined item you see here. To corroborate sources, we need first to compare the authors and their contrasting points of view. Consider this passage and its author, Sir Isaac Coffin. Coffin was a member of Parliament and a wealthy aristocrat. Perhaps this helps explain his opinion of railroads and their effect on what he calls the beauty and comfort of country gentlemen's estates. The Economist magazine, on the other hand, was enthusiastic about England's industrial development. Here, the magazine stresses the benefits to the poor from railroad expansion. But clearly, it sees development of railroads as good for the nation as a whole. Information about authors, their purposes, and the dates of the sources can help in comparing any group of sources. These two sources clearly had different goals in opposing or favoring railroads. Also, the difference in their dates might account for some of their differences in point of view. By 1851, railroads may have seemed less disruptive. Their benefits might have become more apparent. In addition to details about author, time, and purpose, corroborating sources means asking several other kinds of questions. Let's see what some of these questions are. For example, you should ask, what source is more reliable and why? Is one source's author more qualified to speak about the topic? Do the authors have biases? Do they have a personal stake or selfish reason to take a stand one way or the other? What kinds of evidence does each source offer to back up its claims? All of these questions could help students judge which source is more reliable. Another presentation for this course deals in more detail with the issue of source reliability. Also, based on your background knowledge, you should ask how typical each source seems. Making judgments about how typical or representative a source is does require knowledge of the historical context for the source. Another presentation in this course focuses on contextualizing sources. Even when sources conflict, look for things they share in common. Sources with very different points of view often share common assumptions, understandings, observations, etc. Students may need to read closely and make inferences to discover such patterns. It's a good idea to encourage them to do so and to find sources that help them in this effort. You should also ask what other sources might help to understand these two better. That is, look for sources that help you decide how representative each of these two sources is, or even how accurate either one is. You could also ask what sources might lead you to question how typical the two sources were in point of view. Students should learn to be somewhat skeptical about any source. The need for corroboration helps students learn to adopt a questioning attitude about all sources. To sum up, corroborating sources involves several kinds of questions. Questions such as those listed here. Corroborating sources, then, is one of the most important skills needed in interpreting primary source documents. Moreover, the other skills on this list all contribute to developing an ability to corroborate sources effectively.